Alright guys, today I'm going to give you a review on some of the Milwaukee power tools. Whether you are a professional mechanic or even a do-it-yourselfer, tools that are a definite good purchase. Now these tools are all used. They got some wear and tear on them. I've cleaned them up a little bit. I didn't want to review the tools brand new. I wanted to use them for a while and then give you guys feedback on exactly how they perform, what they can do. Are they worth buying? I guess that's the biggest thing. So I'm going to go over these tools with you guys one by one. I'm going to go over positives, negatives, and whether or not I think you should buy one. Alright, tool number one. This is the biggest, baddest electric impact on the market. Now, I have a snap-on one that is very, very similar to this. I would, any day, say this not only performs better, but the battery life lasts longer, in my opinion, than it does for the snap-on. Now the snap-on I've owned for a couple of years, so that being said, I'm sure the battery has deteriorated a little bit. But even with that being said, this is probably my favorite purchase of my Milwaukee power tools. Now I own other M18 tools as well. That's the advantage with the M18 and the M12 stuff, is they are universal. All the batteries for M18 fit on all the M18s, same with the M12s. Now, my favorite part about this gun, okay? My snap-on, you can pulse the trigger, it will slow down, but the feedback that you get from this trigger, the response, is parallel to none. I can start off barely pressing it, and it will slowly start turning. I can go to a faster speed, even faster, another speed. Not only that, when you break bolts loose with this, let's say you're doing lug nuts, you grab a handful of trigger and it gives you full torque. I believe it's like 1,400 foot-pounds of reverse torque out of this gun. Whether or not I believe that value, that's a different conversation. But once it starts breaking the lug nut loose and you have this thing full throttle, as the lug nuts are coming off and as it feels that torque get released, the gun actually slows down by itself. So it's not launching lug nuts out of the socket or starting to wobble around and tear the wheels up. It is super responsive, it responds to torque, and it is now probably my favorite Milwaukee tool. You know, whether you're doing small stuff or big stuff, obviously this is meant for big stuff. Regardless of the job that you're doing, I always find use for it. Now, one of the cons, I will say this thing is heavy, okay? It is heavier than my snap-on. Now, a lot of that has to do with the battery pack. Excuse me, got a garbage truck here. Apologize guys, got some noisy neighbors. What I was saying, alright, can't remember exactly where we were, but we were talking about the Milwaukee M18 fuel impact gun. So, I just showed you guys the variable trigger, which is one of the best things about this gun in my opinion. Also, the response to torque in the sense of breaking away bolts and installing them is huge. Now when you press on the trigger and you're running a socket, or you're running a bolt in, excuse me, and it starts to feel the torque, the impact gun keeps the same speed but puts more power so it can drive it in. It's not like other impact guns where it's either all or nothing. This thing will control the amount of torque it's putting down. Even when you're doing lug nuts, if you give this thing half trigger doing the lug nuts, it's not going to over torque the lug nuts to 200 foot-pounds. I've checked it with a torque wrench. I've installed lug nuts just light trigger, a couple of clicks at about half throttle, and we're sitting anywhere around 90 to 120 foot-pounds of actual torque they're putting on the lug nuts. That's huge, because most guns, if you don't use a torque stick and you just hit it with the impact gun, it's going to way over torque it, stretch studs, break lug nuts, etc., etc. So this gun is an absolute must-have if you're working in a shop, professional technician, or even a do-it-yourselfer that's constantly having to use an impact gun. Now, my rating on this out of 5 stars, here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to give it 4.5. The only reason, it could be a little bit lighter, but in comparison to other impact guns, it's not super heavy. If I had to guess, I don't know what curb weight on it is. I would say probably around 15 pounds, something of the sort. And here's the other thing. It's just a little bit top heavy, okay? Not the end of the world. My snap-on is a little bit more balanced, but guess what? For the performance of this gun, I could care less where exactly the balance is on it. So, again, 4.5 out of 5 stars is my rating on this gun. All right? We're gonna move on to the Milwaukee M12. Now the M12, you're gonna notice all the smaller components with the smaller battery packs. Now this is an M12 1/4-inch impact gun. It is not a fuel model. It has brushes, okay? But here's what I'm gonna say. Not only is this thing super light, and when I say super light, I mean with this XC battery on it, we're probably sitting around 3 pounds maybe, if I had to guess. But for 1/4-inch stuff, and you can even obviously put different adapters in, this thing's got a ton of kick, okay? I don't know all the specs on these guns, but we'll touch on this in a second. In comparison to the 1/4-inch ratcheting impact wrench, this is a lot more powerful, okay? Now, obviously it's not as compact. You can't fit it in as tight of places. But that being said, the amount of torque, breakaway torque this will produce, almost always will get all of your 8mm, 10, and even some of the 12mm bolts out. So the biggest thing for me about this gun is not only is it super handy, but it's one of those tools that you don't use all the time, but when you're working on a job, you set up some of the smaller sockets on it, set it down, and when you're just trying to zip stuff together and you don't want something that's going to produce a ton of over torque and over tightened bolts, this is huge, okay? It is an impact driver. It does, I know for a fact this has to put out at least, I'd have to say 40 foot-pounds, if not probably more for breakaway torque. Installation's probably pretty close as well. Now, the tool comes like this, just like every Milwaukee tool if you just buy them. These XC battery packs are the 4.0 amp hour. Definitely buy these XC batteries, okay? Not to get off topic, but these smaller ones, the standard size ones, don't last as long. Secondly, it's a lot more stable with the bigger battery on it, as you can imagine. So, here's my review on this Milwaukee 1/4-inch impact driver. I'm giving this 5 out of 5 because for the price, for the weight, for how compact it is and how handy it comes, it's an absolute must-have if you're working in a shop. Absolute must-have. Now we're going to do these two together, okay? because they are nearly the same product, okay? One's a 3/8 and one's a 1/4. Exact same thing. Now I bought two because I don't like constantly switching the adapters on the top of the ratchet, okay? The handle is the only downfall of this, and I'm going to touch on that in just a minute, okay? Now, weight of the actual tool has to be 1.5 pounds or 2. I mean, this thing doesn't weigh anything. You actually need an XC battery just to balance out the weight of the tool, okay? Because all the weight in this tool is right up on top on the head, which we're not really concerned about, let's be honest. I mean, ratchets, you're always going to be hanging down, or you're going to be in a tight area trying to get your socket in there. Now, the width of the head is probably just over 1 inch. With a shallow socket, I mean, you're clearing areas where you can only fit about 2 inches of thickness through there. I fit this in way more places than what I thought I could. And the other thing is, as long as you have one of these batteries that are not the XE standard width, the shallow ones, I've been able to hang this down in a super tight area and actually push the gun against the engine block or against a bracket or something to start to thread bolts. But the downfall of this gun, and again, we're talking about both. We're talking about the 1/4 inch side ratchet, and we're talking about the 3/8 side ratchet. The only downfall is the handle, okay? And here's why. When you're in a tight area and you got this gun in there, and let's say you're pulling it this way, the handle constantly will bump into things and it will try to continue to torque the bolt or continue to thread it in. Now, it's not so bad on reverse when you're in a tight area and you're pushing it up and it hits the trigger and actually breaks the bolt loose. It's convenient. But for installation, it can be a pain. That's a very, very minor issue in comparison to how well this thing performs. Now, it doesn't have a lot of breakaway torque, okay? It just doesn't, okay? This is maybe 20, I don't know what they rate it at, but I can't imagine it being more than 20 foot-pounds of breakaway torque. Even if that. Now, I have pushed the limits of this tool, okay? I have broke bolts loose with this that I probably shouldn't have used the tool to break the bolts loose for. The head is bulletproof, okay? It has to be, because some of the stuff that I've broken loose, I felt like the tool itself was breaking. Hasn't broke, still functions perfectly. Now, the cool thing about these, again, most of this Milwaukee stuff, okay? The triggers are super responsive, and they're not just wide open and not. I mean, you can slowly thread stuff in, a little faster, little faster. So the handle's a downfall, but at the same time, the trigger is second to none, okay? Now, as you can imagine, the smaller battery packs don't last as long, but I will say this. I work long days oftentimes, and I can leave one of these M12 XC 6.0 battery packs, or even the 4.0, on this gun, and I can use it all day without the battery failing, okay? Which is huge. Now, when you use the smaller size batteries, right, this will get you maybe 2 to 3 jobs of moderate use before the battery's dead, which, I mean, it's tiny, let's be real, that's to be anticipated. But I feel like even though this battery pack isn't twice as big, it definitely lasts twice as long, if not longer, okay? So, considering these are the same tools, one thing I didn't mention before, these are not the fuel models, okay? These have brushes in them as well. Now you can spend 100 and I think you can find it for 160, 165 on Amazon for the fuel models. Some are even more. These you can find for around 100 bucks, okay? 100 bucks gets you the tool only, but it is every bit of $100 worth of tool, okay? The batteries, yes, become an expense, but that's the thing about the M18 and the M12 stuff, is you can swap it onto any other tool and it works great. Now I have two of the bigger batteries and one smaller battery. Between these three, I'm never in a need for more battery power, because oftentimes I'll have one charging or I'll have this charging, the other two are going, you keep rotating. So back to the conclusion here. The rating I would give these is 4 out of 5 stars. Now the reason I say 4 out of 5 is because I feel like in this day and age we could get a little bit more power out of them as far as breakaway and installation torque. But with that being said, for the weight, for the price, can't beat them. Now, I don't have a Snap-on electronic side ratchet, okay? Snap-on actually sells one that is constant interruptions, I apologize. What I was trying to say is Snap-on sells an electronic ratcheting wrench that actually has a longer neck on it, okay? This portion here of the tool is significantly bigger, okay? That's where Snap-on has Milwaukee beat, in my opinion, is that if we had this neck extended and it was a little bit longer, and we actually had a little bit more clearance because of the fact that it was a thinner neck that was longer, I think it would be a better tool. But for the price, again, $100, around $100, in comparison to I think they're around $300 for the Snap-on one, these are a win all day long. Now, I'm not a Snap-on hater, okay? I got a Snap-on roll card, a Master Series Snap-on box. A ton of my tools are Snap-on, okay? I love Snap-on tools, but when it comes to the electric ratchets and electric impact guns, etc., Milwaukee is running the game right now. So these absolute must-haves in my opinion. Now, to take that a little bit further, you probably don't need the quarter and the 3/8, okay? The 3/8 actually comes with an adapter from Milwaukee for 1/4 inch sockets. So you could buy the 3/8 and be perfectly fine. But the minute you need to put on a 1/4 inch socket that's super shallow, you know, not only is the 3/8 a little bit bigger, so you're losing some clearance, if you can see that, but sometimes it is just handy to have two tools, because I can have a different socket size on this, different one on this. I can switch back and forth. Makes it very, very convenient. Okay? So, absolutely buy at least one of them. Maybe even the 1/4 and then put a 3/8 adapter on it. That might be a better way of doing it. So, we touched on these tools. Okay, now these are tools as well, but they're lights, and I want to show you guys these because I found these on Amazon and I was kind of skeptical on them. I was like, okay, well, you know, they're fairly expensive for little lights, but they're not super expensive. I can't remember exactly how much I paid, but I think these are around 60 bucks on Amazon, okay? Now, this right here is a Milwaukee Rover pivoting floodlight, okay? It has a clip, so you can hang it off of hoods. You can hang it on certain stuff, but here's the other thing I absolutely love about it. It's magnetic. You can set this on a brake rotor, have the light shining on the area that you're working. You can set it up against the body of a car. You can set it on a hood and face it down. And just to give you kind of a closer view, it folds all the way around in 180, okay? It has a covered USB charging port. And the other thing, it gives you notifications when the battery's running low. It will start to flash when the battery's running low. Now, to give you an example, it's probably gonna change the exposure on the camera. It's super bright, okay? That's my favorite thing about it. Not only that, it's got 3 light settings. The best part about it is the battery, and we'll touch on that in a second, but I'm gonna give you an example. Now, probably hard to see on the camera, but it is super bright, okay? Now there's the first setting, second setting, third setting, okay? Turn it back off. Okay, you look happy now. The battery is incredible on this thing. I have had it on high setting 3.5, 4 hours before it starts to blink, okay? Now if you run the lower settings, it lasts even longer. Now, that being said, you can't swap batteries on it, okay? It is a USB. So that's where some of the downfall is. Once it's dead, it's dead. It's going in the power drawer and it's getting charged. And recharge time on it isn't crazy. I mean, it's about 45 minutes, 50 minutes I think they rate it at for recharge time. So it takes some time to recharge, but for what it does, how much it weighs, how versatile it is, and how bright it is, I would, if I could, give this more than 5 stars. I would give this 6 out of 5 stars. For the price, versatility, and durability, I don't know if the camera can see that, but I've dropped this thing from up high. It's fallen off the lift onto the cement. I mean, I cannot kill this thing. It just works. All 6 of these that are sitting up on my tool carts are definitely good purchases for Milwaukee as far as power tools go. I've had plenty of use with all of these, and if I could do it over again, I'd buy them all in a minute. Now, that being said, I want to go over each tool individually. I'm not going to spend a ton of time with each individual tool, but I am going to give you some pros, some cons, and we'll see. Alright, I apologize guys, we got interrupted. This is the last tool out of the 6 I didn't talk about. Very similar to the other light I was showing you. We'll give you an up close look. This is an ultra slim LED light. It's got different mode settings on it. Again, this one I think was even cheaper. I think this one was like, I want to say 40 bucks, something of the sort. Milwaukee, USB charge. Now, again, just like the other one, I love this light. It is shock proof. It is super bright. The battery life on this, I would say, isn't quite the same as the 360 light that I got over there. but you still every bit of 2 to 3 hours on full brightness, and the recharge time on this is super quick. I think if I remember right, I saw this thing recharge in like under half hour, which is super handy. Now again, it's got a magnet base. So one of my favorite things about this is you can stick sideways, you can stick it upside down on anything metal, ferrous. As a technician, you guys already know you can't have enough lights, okay? I mean, like, I got headlights, I got stream lights, but the quick lights that you can just stick and just go, those are where the money is at. And the reason why, again, comes down to time, because the amount of time I don't spend messing around with this and I just stick it up onto something metal, turn it on, and I don't even worry about leaving it on because the battery lasts so long. Let's be real. It's not often that you're hanging a light for 3 hours straight on full brightness, you know, with one light. Usually it's faster jobs where you're, you know, hour, 2 hours, whatever. And also, same feature, it starts blinking when the battery gets low, which is super helpful. Now, here's the only downfall about this light and the swivel light I just showed you. They're relatively small and they're magnetic. So here's what happens to me sometimes. Sometimes I stick it up there, working on a job, I move on to a different car, you know, completely forget about the job I was working on, a couple hours goes by, and then next thing you know, I'm bolting the wheel on the car and forgetting the fact that I have a light on the car still. When they do die, you know, they're dead. There's no light coming out of them. So sometimes, like, you know, you can imagine red paint on a red car. This might blend in perfectly. Sometimes you're putting them in areas that are so tight that you're not normally going to see that the light was sitting there. But you just got to be smart about it, obviously. That's the only downside about these is how small they are, but it's also a benefit of how small they are because I can stick this down in areas where even a stream light is wider where you can't get them in. And the other cool thing about this is, especially if you're working in the engine bay, you know, like on some of the side of the body rails, or if I'm working on, let's say, doing a rack and pinion, I can stick this up on the back side of the engine block, you know, on something that's actually metal, not aluminum, and then I can lift the car up and I can have light above me that's real small and confined. No setup time, you stick it, you turn it on. Super slick. So again, these lights are super handy. They're worth every penny. I bought my Milwaukee LED lights, both models, on Amazon, and I wouldn't take it back because they rock. So the other tools I'm currently using right now, but again, it's probably my favorite one of all of them. 1/4 inch impact ratchet, side impact ratchet. So I got interrupted by a customer. Got a brake job I forgot about on this little Suzuki SX4. Suzukis are being discontinued. I will be thrilled when that happens because they're very hard to get parts for. But here's what I wanted to show you as part of this tool review. It kind of goes together perfectly. So, for one, there's that Milwaukee M18 fuel impact gun. For two, there's my 3/8 Milwaukee M12 ratchet, right? And then for three, I'll come right over here and we'll take a look. I got my light. 3 of those tools right there. You guys, after switching to this Milwaukee stuff, I am almost finished entirely using air tools. I mean, obviously there's some stuff that you need air tools for. But, you know, that being said, the electric stuff is the way to go. I mean, it is just more convenient. That's all it comes down to. Every minute that you spend walking around a car, grabbing a tool, pulling an air hose, whatever it may be, is a minute where you're not physically wrenching on the cars. So, that being said, I don't walk around with air hoses anymore. There are some jobs where, yeah, I gotta hook up the side air ratchets or the impact gun, whatever else, but it's rare now, okay? Electric is the future. Whether you like it or not, electric cars, electric tools, you got electric leaf blowers, you name it, it's electric now. And the performance of this, it is rare that I can't get something off with this, and I can get something off with my heavy duty snap-on pneumatic 1/2 inch big size impact gun. Now that's like, you know, 1500 reverse torque, I think, and again, like I mentioned prior, I think this one's around like 1400. Whatever, whether or not that's actually the case, the point I'm making is it's very rare that there's something this guy can't do and the pneumatic air impact gun can. So, like I said, guys, it's the way of the future. It's worth investing in. I give Milwaukee all the credit in the world because not only do the tools perform exceptionally well, they're not crazy expensive. I mean, I guarantee you the internals of this gun are nearly identical to snap-ons. I would put a large chunk of money on that. And I'm not saying they are identical, I'm saying nearly identical. You compare that, the tool itself, this guy right here, I think you can get them for like 200 bucks, okay? A snap-on, 400. And that's just for the tool. It doesn't include a battery pack. Then I think they get 200 bucks a battery. These XC50s, you can find these floating around for like 120 bucks, maybe even cheaper. Now, I hate to admit this, but I'm an Amazon guy, okay? Most of my Milwaukee and all my tools that aren't actually Snap-on, Matco, etc. are from Amazon, okay? Now, the Snap-on stuff I do buy, most of it wasn't on a tool truck, okay? It was Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, stuff like that. Do you know how many people get into this industry? The tool truck guy convinces them to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. They start in a shop environment, you know, the conditions aren't right, they didn't really know what they were getting into, and then what do you know, they got $5,000 worth of tools that they're selling for 2,500 bucks because it's not for them. Those are the kind of tools that I buy. I mean, a lot, I'll say probably half of my socket and ratchet stuff is Snap-on. You know, and that doesn't even include specialty tools and even more than that, but most of that stuff was not bought on a tool truck. That's why I own this whole setup over here, box, stacked with tools, roll cart, stacked with tools, and you know, it's all paid for. It's all paid for cash. Now, yeah, did I finance some of it fresh out of tech school? Absolutely. I was on the 19% interest, you know, the crazy deal they give you out of school, but hey, we're going to give you a 40% off. Here's a prime example right here. Okay, 1/4 inch Snap-on set, right? What are these? I think 5 to 15, okay? In shallow and deep. I bought this off Facebook Marketplace for like 100 bucks. I got this whole set for 100 bucks. Okay, now for some of you, you don't need to buy Snap-on. I'm not saying, hey, you have to spend $100 on a 1/4 inch impact set. You really don't. Do I prefer Snap-on over most of the other tools? Absolutely. But you go on a tool truck, it's probably close to 300 bucks, okay? 100 bucks. That's what I picked this up for. In fact, not only that, guess what else was $100? The 3A set. He was selling both of these. Don't tell me that's not a killer deal. Both those packs for 200 bucks. So, I don't want to be one of those YouTube guys that, you know, gets in trouble over this kind of stuff, but stay off the tool truck. It is in your best interest to stay as far away from the tool truck as possible. Now, that does not take anything away from the quality of Snap-on, the quality of Matco, the quality of Mat. I even have, a lot of my favorite tools are Cornwell, okay? Still spendy, but not nearly as spendy as Snap-on, right? Here's one of my favorite pneumatic quarter drives. Again, Cornwell. Now guess what Snap-on ones don't have? This has a greaser for the top. I mean, crafty stuff. So the point I'm trying to make is that, yes, is Snap-on and the other name brands a lot better quality than most of the tools? Absolutely. Or is there a value in going on the tool truck and paying retail for everything? No. I would stay away from it. Also, guys, start grinding down hubs. Just take the extra step, take the extra minute, clean them up, make sure everything's nice and clean. When you do, make sure you wipe off all the penetrating oil. You do not want that falling onto the brakes, contaminating the brakes. So, what that is for some of you that don't know, this is a needle scaler. Basically, it's an air hammer with a bunch of needles that reciprocate back and forth. Here's the advantage. You can't screw studs up. It'll just float right around the studs. It is great for flattening rusted areas on the hub, because essentially what it does is break apart all the high spots that have rust on them, which is, in Minnesota, it's a big thing. Now, you live in down south, southern states, probably not so much, but you get my point. Another one of my personal favorites, Milwaukee M18 grinder. This is a fuel model. This thing kicks ass. Alright guys, one more thing before we stop talking about Milwaukee for a little while. Gotta show you guys this. Now, I'm gonna start right away with the con, okay? This light is battery operated. You cannot plug power into it, alright? Now hear me out. I don't mind. This XC 6.0 battery, or even the 4.0 on this light assembly, and we're going to get into the light assembly, but I've had it run almost 4 hours, one battery charge, okay? Now, it is inconvenient that you can't plug it in, but even with that being said, it doesn't bother me because you can just keep cycling batteries around. especially if you're in a position where you have extra batteries or you cycle through Milwaukee batteries. Like I touched on before, you should have a bunch of these things just ready to go. This light is awesome, okay? I'm gonna start by saying this. It actually has a soft, rubberized, nearly scratch-proof corner tabs. Now, the other thing, this extends this far on this side, this far on this side. I had a old C4 Vet. You know how wide those hoods are? This thing grabbed all the way around on both sides. Now, not only that, it is incredibly bright. Now it's got different mode settings as well, which I was trying to show you. It's even brighter. Now, it's hard to show you guys on the video how much light this thing actually throws, but it's very, very bright. It's brighter than the plug-in little eBay one I have. Not only that, the neat thing about this is no matter which way this is hanging, you can rotate the light around any direction you want, okay? The other thing is, as you can imagine, this is the holding bracket for it. And yes, it bites hard onto those. I'll set this over here. Still got a hook on the top, which is a must, okay? But here's the other thing. This thing doesn't weigh anything. I mean, it is feather light. The heaviest part about this light is the battery pack. This right here, a pound, maybe 2, okay? Now, I'm not going to bounce this off the ground like I did my other lights, although it did fall off. I hit it with my arm and it flung off the bracket, smacked the ground, and no damage. So I'd say that's a good sign. Anyways, what I'm trying to say, absolutely wonderful tool to have in your arsenal. You know, it's not as cheap as some of the eBay plug-in ones, but the fact that, and you gotta make sure these are clipped in nice. The fact that it's battery operated and that I can walk way across the lot and get almost 4 hours of run time out of a single battery, it's pretty sweet, okay? So, I'm not gonna say this is the best underhood light option, but I am a huge fan of Milwaukee. The only reason I bought it is because Milwaukee makes it. But I'll tell you what, it does better, performs better than I thought it would. And I thought the battery deal would drive me nuts, but it doesn't. The battery dies, I pull this battery off, I go grab the battery, smack it in, and I'm ready to go. I'm not fighting extension cords and trying to stretch cords over cars, and you lift the car up and the cord gets caught on something, yanks the light off the hood. So I will stop there, but this is a phenomenal light.